Today I am going to briefly introduce the problem of food and nutrition security, and then the colleagues will take over. Already, you are on the first slide. You go ahead. Our whole aim is food for all, and in what is called the Anthropocene era. The Anthropocene era, which has just started, is really an era in which human beings are going to play an increasingly important role, whether it is for good or for bad. They can shape the future, they can destroy the future. Human beings. That's what the Anthropocene area. So it is so important for the Science Congress, because science is one of those instruments for human progress in both knowledge, technology, and economic progress. The Anthropocene era, as I said, unfortunately, has begun with somewhat of a difficult period. I'm sorry, I'd asked for a computer in the podium here, but since it's not available, I have to just, whenever I have some material, I have to. The Anthropocene era is witnessing the loss of biodiversity, and it's an important era in which the environment has assumed importance, but not from the point of view of environmental discussions are getting important because of climate change and biodiversity loss among the two major things. The climate change, you have the problem of temperature, problem of water, and problem of sea level rise. And here all are important for Andhra, the coastal areas, the sea level rise and so on. How do you, alarming among many things, we have made tremendous progress. We have made progress in terms of agriculture production, called the Green Revolution and so on. But nevertheless, we have a very large number of women, children going to bed hungry. Hungry partially, particularly what we call hidden hunger or the micronutrient deficiencies. Iron, zinc, iodine, vitamin A, vitamin B12 and so on. They are very rampant. And I have got the data here. I'm not going to take time to read the data, but you can, this is a great unfinished challenge. But talking about biodiversity, for a very long time, we are talking about zero hunger challenge has been issued with the United Nations. Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General, says every country should be zero hunger, no hunger. But that has got three dimensions: calorie deficiency, protein hunger, and hidden hunger caused by macronutrient deficiency. All the three are important to have a hunger-free India. Now, as I mentioned earlier, genetic erosion is widely prevalent. I was happy to see the chairperson of the National Biodiversity Authority here. She is here, but you can help us only if we help the authority. There are two major acts of Government of India: the National Biodiversity Act, the National Plant Protection and Farmers' Rights Act. All the two are important, and they can be important instruments for conservation of resources. You will find in the conservation movement, the biodiversity conservation in particular, it is women who have played a very key role for a very long time. Even the domestication of rice was started by women. When men went out for hunting, they were food gatherers, women became food growers. You will find from this slide a number of tribal families, indigenous families, tribal families. We think they don't know anything at all. But if you talk to these ladies, they will tell you exactly. I have called it curative diversity. Curative diversity is in medicinal plants. Medicinal plants which cure diseases. Food security and curative security are both important. These ladies have conserved. There is data here, how much they have conserved. The backdrop to our independence was the Great Bengal famine. And you all know about it, so I don't want to say. Several million women, children died during the Bengal famine. There are a number of reasons, but Professor Amartya Sen says even in that year, food was not in short supply. Food was there if there was equity in distribution. In other words, when you talk about hunger, it is not merely availability of food in the market, but economic access to food is very important, and the digestion of food The body is very important. After independence, Mahatma Gandhi said before independence, to those who are hungry, God is bread, and therefore you must ensure that the God of bread is available to every home and hut. Jawaharlal Nehru made the famous remark, everything else can wait but not agriculture. And his main approach to agriculture was more infrastructure, very important, irrigation, fertilizer production, pesticide production. Agriculture universities, the very first one was established at Pantnagar in 1958. So Nehru, he had visited the United States and we visited some of the land grant colleges, and he found that they are very suitable for India, and that is how the Agriculture University, now Veterinary University, Fisheries University, and so on. There was emphasis on fertilizer production. We have outstanding fertilizer, Kripco, Trifco, and so on, companies in this country. Thanks to Nehru's emphasis on technological transformation of Indian agriculture. Well, in the 1960s was an era of doomsday specialists. Many people wrote off India. For example, Paul and William Paddock. I suggest particularly scholars here who would like to go through the material carefully, who can get it from the, they can put it on the website. No objection. So, people like Paul Ehrlich, Paul and William Paddock, a bad cold, unfortunately, at this time, but I will try my best. Ehrlich's statement was that India is a hopeless case. Paul, a famous population bomb person, he and his wife said that whatever you can do, India cannot be fed. Paul and William Paddock said from 1974, Indians will go to slaughterhouse, like sheep going to slaughterhouse, they will die out of hunger. Many of you may not know all this because they were 40 years, 50 years ago really, 1960s. But then we decided, I remember, we had a meeting at IRI in an auditorium not as big as this one, but something like this, where we said the doomsday predictions should be falsified. Our research item is only one, to falsify the doomsday especially. You may not think the research item is a very complicated research item, but that's what we decided. We give the highest priority to falsify the doomsday experts. And fortunately it was done. The government also supported. There are three major elements. One is technology, science-based technology, then public policies which are conducive, particularly pricing and marketing, procurement and so on, and then above all the farmers' enthusiasm or the people's participation if it's other technology. All these three, political will, professional skill, and the people's participation are all important to get. What did we do? There was a IADP, Intensive Agriculture District Program, of which this part was also part of that IADP districts. There were those districts where there was water, but unfortunately there was not that technology which can use water and fertilizer efficiently. That is what came later, the DG Wujen gene in rice and Norendorphin genes on wheat. These came at a very appropriate time in the 1960s. We got them in the case of wheat through Dr. Norman Borlaug from Mexico. In the case of rice, we got it from Taiwan and also from the International Rice Research Institute. In fact, recently the ERI celebrated 50 years of IR8 in India, the IR8 variety, the 50th anniversary of its introduction. These filled one important gap in IADP. People say, why did IADP did not succeed? Because it lacked an important ingredient, that is a variety which can respond to the rest of the package. We have come to the stage from the Bengal famine to a Food Security Act It has become a right, one of the few countries in the world which has declared food as a basic right, human right. In other words, it is like right to information, right to work, right to food. We are one country where we have the Food Security Act provides a method, but it has some important features. One is the woman in the household is recognized the head of the household from the point of view of entitlement. Secondly, a whole life cycle approach. Thirdly, particular attention to the first 1,000 days of a child's life, first 3 years, which are exceedingly important. So you had, if you want to now produce, our country this year is going to import a wheat. Well, I won't take that case just now, but there are problems of because of drought, because of climate change, and so on. We may be because we have made food as a basic human right, and government is obliged to give 5 kilograms of rice or wheat or jowar or bajra. The other important feature of this bill is it has enlarged the concept of food from purely wheat and rice to a whole variety of what we call orphan crops, minor millets and so on. Those also have been included in the entitlement. And I think particularly those who are here from home science colleges, I request you to bring this to the attention of the card holders. In other words, don't only go by wheat or rice, but you have other, what we call these now millets and so on. They were called by the British as coarse cereals. We call it as nutri cereals, climate smart nutri cereals. So the National Food Security Act, 100 million tons of wheat we can now produce without difficulty, provided we have the right public policy. I mentioned earlier the other important problem in the case of wheat or rice or any other crop is the plant protection side, pests and diseases. So when we started our work on high-yielding varieties, the same conditions which favor crops, also conditions which can favor pathogens and pests. And therefore we started the genetic checkmating. Genetic checkmating of diseases was an important component of the today, those of you who are sitting here all over the world, they talk about sustainable development goals. The development to be permanent should be sustainable, economically sustainable, socially sustainable, and environmentally sustainable. This particular session convened by our General President deals with session goal 2 of the 17 goals of the SDC on food and nutrition security and the whole area of access to food, income security and so on. Therefore, we are now in a position to put that bill into action with our own homegrown food. From Bengal famine to right to food with homegrown food is a remarkable transition. I'm sorry to say to the other fellow scientists, there is no comparison at all for what has happened there. It is the most significant achievement of this country. From the Bengal famine to right to food with homegrown food. Keep it in mind. Those who are in agriculture take pride, because sometimes agriculture is considered to be a profession which requires only brawn and not brain, but it won't do. You require both brawn and brain. Now, one criticism against the Green Revolution was it endangers the environmental assets. So I developed the concept of the evergreen revolution which will be permanent, increase in productivity in perpetuity without ecological harm. And how it can be achieved is described in this book. Those of you are wanting it, published by Academic Foundation. President Obama, when he came to India, his term is now going to expire in a few days, and he mentioned that the most important area of collaboration between the US and India should be in the area of sustainable agriculture based on the evergreen revolution approach. I mentioned already there are three major dimensions of hunger. If you want to say I'm a hunger-free state or a hunger-free household, you should attend to all the three in what we call balanced diet: calorie deficiency, protein deficiency, and also micronutrient deficiency, called a hidden hunger. Fighting hidden hunger through biofortification, in other words, nature, Gandhiji said, nature provides for everybody's need, but not for everyone's greed. Very true. Those who know enough about plants, you know, there are plants which can provide high vitamin A. Recently, we gave the World Food Prize to 4 people who developed a variety of sweet potato, which has very high beta carotene content and so on. So you can either take from nature varieties which are very rich in nutrients, or you can breed varieties. Thirdly, you can also do by genetic modification. I'm not going to deal with genetic modification because there are problems there, but nevertheless, you can, Ingo Potricus, for example, developed the golden rice. The golden rice was supposed to have very high beta carotene. So how do you, there are, whatever farmers are growing, we call it a farming system. Rain-fed farming system, irrigated farming system, or a plantation crop farming system. How do you mainstream nutrition in the farming system? I developed a methodology in which Dr. Bhavani and others are following. In other words, how do you really incorporate the dimension of nutrition in the whole farming system? They call it FSN, Farming System for Nutrition. Farming System for Nutrition. One of the important components of farming system for nutrition is the crop livestock integration. I'm happy there is also a veterinary university here, Animal Sciences University. It is very important to have both crops and animals and fishes. All the components of food security must be brought into it. It's also important to involve panchayats because we are fortunate to have grassroots level democratic structures called the panchayats. And for example, we have last year, the year which has gone by was known as the International Year of Pulses. We are short of pulses, we are importing pulses, and pulses are important for protein hunger, to fight protein hunger. We persuaded the panchayats to convert themselves into pulses panchayat. The pulses panchayat, they go every week, harvest the water, rainwater and grows. The other important element is nutrition literacy. Nutrition literacy, we can go to a home science college to get nutrition literacy, but in the villages to get nutrition literacy, we are training a cadre of people, mostly women, called the hunger fighters, community hunger fighters. They are trained in the science and art of nutrition. There are non-GMO methods of achieving your goal. Some of the young scholars here may have an ambition to produce new kind of genetic combination. You can do the GM method, or there are other methods like marker-assisted selection. And as of late, all of you have been reading what is called the genetic editing, gene editing, CRISPR technique is considered to be a very important area. In fact, I am happy to say that in this 50s and 60s, we had the same ambition what CRISPR has now been able to achieve. So you can achieve the purpose of a novel genetic combination by means other than purely recombinant DNA. You can use gene editing technologies or marker-assisted selection. I also want to plead here to the General President, as one of your recommendations, a new kind of botanical garden. You know, we have the habit of all universities having a botanical garden. This botanical garden is a nutrition garden. As you enter the garden, there's a section of vitamin A, vitamin B12, iron, iodine, and so on. You see different sections and the plants which can provide those nutrients. This is very important for farmers. In the genetic garden are biofortified plants. Now the sweet potato I already mentioned to you, which is very rich in a new kind of sweet potato, yellow flesh. You can collect, I request those who are in the botany or home science colleges, have a small garden, a nutrition garden, in which all the plants which can provide different missing nutrients resulting in malnutrition. They can all be, because people have to understand this is the crop you have to go to get this material and so on. Sea level rise is going to be an important consequence of climate change, apart from temperature changes, precipitation changes, sea level rise, and we have to be prepared for it. For that purpose, we don't realize there are a number of plants here. For example, Andhra is very rich in mangroves, the Koringa mangroves and so on. We call them bioshields. They provide you some shelter against sea level rise, but not completely. They also provide very good genes. We have identified genes for saltwater tolerance, seawater tolerance in mangroves, and transferred them to rice. And we have promoted along the coast of Tamil Nadu the seawater farming for coast area prosperity. Seawater constitutes 97% of the world's water. We are all the time fighting and talking about water, but we don't think about the seawater which is available. We have now seawater farming, halophytes. We have a genetic garden. I told you a genetic garden of biofortified crops. Similarly, a genetic garden of halophytes. Halophytes which can provide you with genetic material or direct cultivation of. Now all over the world the rainforests have become exceedingly important because the rainforests are the host to a large variety of diversity. Biodiversity both above ground and below ground. Microbiological diversity is very high. This is one project which I designed in Guyana at the request of the Commonwealth. It is called the Ivokrama Rainforest Program. You can see it in a website. It's a wonderful forest. Guyana is a wonderful, very rich. They would have gone but for the fact that we have now got the rainforest biosphere reserve. You look at this boy who is so wise. If the forest disappears, the sky, which is the roof of the world, collapses. Man and plants die together. In other words, this kind of, he is illiterate boy. He's what we call Amerindian. Guyana has three sources of population. One is the Indian population, which is the largest, 47%. African population, about 43%, and about 3 to 4% of Amerindians. This Amerindian boy is very. Similarly, in our own country, in Kerala, the silent violent rainforest was one of the first battle between the government of Kerala and the environmentalists. It was one of the serious battles. The environmentalists won. There was a committee appointed under the chairmanship of Professor M.G.K. Menon, who developed an excellent report. Those of you who want to see the biological richness of this area, you can go to that report still. It's very important. Lastly, what I have been trying to say now is, if you want to, I started by saying it's a great shame that we have so many undernourished people, malnourished. In fact, the International Food Policy Research Institute Food Security Index, we come very bottom low. Why should we? We have got so many universities, so many wonderful experts and so on, and wonderful farmers of the country are the pride of the nation. That is why Lal Bahadur Shastri said, Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan. And of course, Vajpayee added the Jai Vigyan. Jai Vigyan, Jai Jawan and Jai Kisan. But no, please. Let food be thy medicine, as long ago Hippocrates said. For example, my daughter, who just happens to be the head of ICMR, Dr. Soumya, if she was to come here, you had kindly invited her. She has published a number of papers to show that in the case of tuberculosis and so on, food is the medicine. Without purely drugs alone, a purely drug-based approach cannot help. It has to be a food come drug-based approach. And I am happy that the Nobel Prizes I congratulate the Honorable Chief Minister of the state for his farsightedness, for giving some stimulus to work for a Nobel Prize. Because for everything you have to work for it. The Nobel Prize, this lady got it for the first time for a medicinal plant, art of medicine. And so they have started recognizing what I call curative diversity. We have cultural diversity, we have culinary diversity, we have curative diversity, enormous diversity in this country. And how do you convert it all by the method I mentioned, integrating food, agriculture, nutrition, and health? They must come together. Just because ICMR is different, ICR is different, and so on, but the fact remains that nutrition, agriculture, and health should come together. Then we will not have persistence of the era of shame. The doomsday people should be falsified. I hope one of you will take the challenge as a result of this meeting. Take one of the doomsday predictions, and your research should be how to falsify it. I wish you all the best. Happy New Year and wonderful Congress which you organized. Thank you.